Before I start the video, I want to say that a lot of people watch my videos without a subscription. If my content resonates with you, you could subscribe to the channel. Thus YouTube would promote it more, which in turn would motivate me to release and improve content more often. Thank you. I woke up in a sweat, my heart racing, as I remembered the events of that night. It was supposed to be a fun trip, a chance to experience India's vibrant culture. But within minutes, my life turned into a nightmare. I had arrived in Delhi a few days before, and I was fascinated by the bustling streets, the colourful markets, and the delicious food. I had heard of safety concerns, especially for women travelling alone at night, but brushed them off as exaggerated. After all, I was a strong and independent woman. I could handle myself. But that night I realized I had been wrong. I went out for a walk, enjoying the cool breeze and the twinkling lights of the city. As I walked down the quiet street, I noticed a group of men following me. At first I thought it was just a coincidence. As they got closer, I sensed danger. I tried to quicken my pace, hoping to lose them in the maze of streets, but they were relentless. Soon they caught up with me and began pestering me, saying obscene and vulgar things. I tried to ignore them, to walk away, but they grabbed me and pinned me against the wall. What happened next remains in my memory as a fog. I remember their hands, their breathing, their laughter. I remember screaming for help, but no one came. And then I remember the pain, the searing pain that made me pass out. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. I was in excruciating pain, and it took me a few moments to realize what had happened. I had been brutally attacked and left to die in a dark alley. The police arrived shortly thereafter, and they were efficient and professional. They took my statement, collected evidence, and began their investigation. It didn't take them long to find the suspects, who were known for their criminal activity in the area. They were arrested, and I was told they would be charged with assault and attempted rape. But that didn't bring me any comfort. I was traumatized, scared, and ashamed. I could not believe that this had happened to me, that I had let my guard down and been the victim of such a heinous crime. I didn't know how to face my family, my friends, myself. It took me months to recover physically and emotionally. I went to therapy, talked to experts, and tried to make sense of what had happened. And gradually, I came to understand that it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had survived. My opinion? The story of the Swedish tourist's traumatic experience in India highlights the importance of taking precautions while traveling, especially for women. It serves as a reminder of the pervasive issue of violence against women worldwide and the need for greater awareness, prevention, and justice. It was the summer of 2019, and I had planned a solo trip to India. I was excited to explore the country, its culture, and its landmarks. Being a traveler, I had read a lot about the safety precautions to take while traveling to India, especially for women. I had made sure to book my accommodation in a safe and well-known area, and I had planned my itinerary to avoid any remote or deserted places. On my third day in India, I decided to take an overnight tour of the city with a guide and a few locals. The tour was lovely, and we visited several local landmarks, tasted some delicious street food, and had a good time. The guide was friendly and informative, and the locals were welcoming and hospitable. However, things took a drastic turn towards the end of the tour. As we were wrapping up, the guide bid us farewell, and I was left alone with the locals. Initially, I didn't feel anything out of the ordinary, but as we walked towards the taxi, the locals started to behave differently. They were whispering among themselves and seemed agitated. I started to feel uncomfortable and started to walk faster, trying to keep a safe distance. But it was too late. Suddenly, the locals attacked me from behind, hitting me hard on the head, and dragged me into a dark alley. They took away my bag, phone, and money and started to assault me. I screamed for help, but no one came. It was a nightmare, that I had never experienced before. I don't remember how long it went on, but when they were done, they left me in a disfigured state and ran away. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, feeling helpless and vulnerable. Finally, I managed to crawl out of the alley and find help. I was taken to a local hospital, where I received medical attention. The incident was reported to the local police, who launched an investigation into the matter. With the help of the guide, they were able to find and apprehend the suspects. They were charged with assault, and the case was taken to court. The trial was long and arduous, and it took a toll on my mental and emotional well-being. However, justice prevailed, and the suspects were convicted of their heinous crime. They were sentenced to prison, and I felt a sense of relief knowing that they wouldn't be able to harm anyone else. My experience was a harsh reminder of the dangers associated with traveling at night in India. Despite taking all the necessary precautions, I had fallen prey to the criminals. It was a traumatic experience that would stay with me forever. But it also taught me to be more vigilant, to trust my instincts, and to be prepared for the worst. In conclusion, traveling is an exciting and enriching experience, but it comes with its own set of risks. As a traveler, it is essential to be aware of the potential dangers and take necessary precautions to ensure your safety. It is also important to trust your instincts and seek help when in need. Let my experience be a reminder that safety should always come first while traveling. My opinion: it is evident that traveling alone, especially at night, can be dangerous in certain parts of the world. It is essential to be aware of the potential risks and take necessary precautions to ensure personal safety while traveling. The night was dark and the streets were quiet. The tourist, whose name was John, had just finished a long day of sightseeing in Mexico City. He decided to go out for a night on the town and experience the local culture. After a few hours of exploring, John realized it was getting late, so he hailed a cab to take him back to his hotel. The cab driver was friendly and chatty, and John felt at ease. However, as they got further away from the crowded tourist areas, the driver started taking unfamiliar streets. John started to feel uneasy, but he tried to brush it off and assumed the driver knew a shortcut. Suddenly, the cab driver pulled over on a dark, deserted street. John's heart started racing as he heard the driver make a call on his cell phone. Within minutes, 3 men appeared out of the shadows, and John knew he was in trouble. The men pulled John out of the cab and started beating him. It took all his valuables and cash, leaving him bleeding and bruised on the street. John felt helpless and scared, but he managed to call out for help. Thankfully, a kind local heard his cries and rushed to his aid. The Good Samaritan called for an ambulance and gave John a phone number to call the police. The police arrived soon after and took John's statement. They assured him that they would do everything in their power to catch the perpetrators. John was relieved, but also worried that he would never see his belongings again. The next day, John went to the police station to check on the progress of the investigation. To his surprise, they had caught all of the criminals, including the cab driver. John was overjoyed and grateful to the police for their swift action. He thanked them and was on his way. Although John was shaken by the incident, he was determined not to let it ruin his trip. He continued to explore Mexico City, but this time with more caution. He learned to be extra careful at night, especially when he was in unfamiliar areas. My opinion: the story serves as a reminder to be cautious while traveling, especially in unfamiliar places. Tourists should take precautions to ensure their safety, such as avoiding taking rides from unlicensed taxis and being aware of their surroundings. Additionally, it is important to remember that there are kind people willing to help in times of need, and to always be grateful for their assistance. As I sit here, reminiscing about my trip to Europe in 2016, I can't help but think of the harrowing experience that I had while in Amsterdam. It all started when I decided to take a walk around the city and explore its sights. The city was beautiful, I was enjoying my time. But as the night wore on, things took a dark turn. As I walked down a quiet street, I noticed a group of locals outside a bar. They were laughing and joking around. As I walked past, I accidentally bumped into one of them. I apologized and tried to keep walking, but the group started to get aggressive. Before I knew it, I was surrounded by the group of locals who were shouting and shoving me. I tried to defend myself, but I was no match for them. They beat me mercilessly. I was left lying in the street, unconscious. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed with several serious injuries. The doctors told me that I had suffered broken bones and a concussion. I couldn't believe what had happened to me. I had never felt so vulnerable and alone. As I lay there in my hospital bed, I couldn't help but think about how lucky I was to be alive. If it weren't for the quick response of the locals who called an ambulance, I might not be here today. The police began investigating the incident, and I was able to give them a description of the attackers. It wasn't long before they apprehended several suspects who were charged with assault and robbery. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain, fear, and uncertainty. I was in a foreign country, alone and injured, and I didn't know what was going to happen to me. But despite everything that had happened, I refused to let fear consume me. I was determined to make the most of my time in Europe, and I refused to let this experience define my trip. I spent the rest of my time in Europe exploring new places, meeting new people, and trying new things. And although I was always aware of the dangers that lurked around every corner, I never let my guard down. My opinion. As a person, reading this story has taught me the importance of being vigilant and cautious while traveling, especially in unfamiliar surroundings. It's also important to remember that even in moments of darkness, there is always hope and kindness to be found in the world. It was a warm summer night in 2015 when Lisa, a young American tourist, found herself walking the narrow streets of Florence, Italy. She had spent the day admiring the city's many historical landmarks and was now looking to unwind with a quiet walk before turning in for the night. As she strolled along, admiring the charming buildings and picturesque alleyways, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw a tall, burly man approaching her. At first, she thought nothing of it, assuming he was simply another tourist out for a walk. But as he drew nearer, she noticed something off about his demeanor. The man began to speak to her in Italian, which Lisa didn't understand. She politely tried to excuse herself, but he persisted, demanding money from her. Lisa's heart began to race as she realized this man was not simply a friendly passerby, but rather a dangerous individual looking to take advantage of her vulnerability. She tried to walk away, but the man followed her, getting closer and more aggressive with each passing moment. Lisa began to run, hoping to find safety in one of the many hotels or stores that lined the street. But the man was fast, and he continued to pursue her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of sprinting through the deserted streets, Lisa came upon a small hotel tucked away in a quiet corner. She rushed inside, panting and out of breath, and pleaded with the receptionist to let her stay the night. Thankfully, the receptionist was kind and understanding, and he quickly checked her in and showed her to her room. Lisa collapsed onto the bed, her heart still racing with fear and adrenaline. She knew she had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation, and she vowed to never let her guard down again. From that day forward, Lisa made a point to always travel with a friend or group when exploring new cities. She also made sure to research the safest areas to visit and the most trustworthy hotels to stay in. Looking back on that terrifying night in Florence, Lisa realized how lucky she had been to escape unharmed. She knew that not all travelers were as fortunate, and she made a promise to herself to spread awareness about the dangers of traveling alone and to help others stay safe while exploring the world. My opinion? Traveling to new places is an exciting experience, but it's important to be aware of the potential dangers and take necessary precautions to stay safe. Lisa's story serves as a reminder that it's always better to travel with a companion and avoid walking alone in unfamiliar places at night.